A very good evening to you and welcome to RTV News with me, Fiona Mbabazi. Now, the Office of the Ombudsman has announced that in the last year, 2020, 286 people were permanently convicted of corruption offences and were officially announced on the list of those convicted of the crime. We do have the details with Sam Kalisa.
While speaking to the General Assembly of the two chambers of Parliament on the activities of the Office of the Ombudsman for the last fiscal year, the ombudsperson Nirere Madeleine pointed out that the majority of those convicted of corruption offences are men, who are 249, representing 87%, while 37 women, accounting to 13%, were convicted. 732 million Rwandan francs and 147,915 US dollars were the total amount used while giving or receiving corruption. On the other hand, 286 corruption convicts were fined to 238 billion Rwandan francs and 432,000 US dollars. Ombudsperson Nirere Madeleine says this is a result of Rwanda's efforts to fight corruption. She added that the law reforms and enforcement are important in fighting against corruption.
The
other thing that made fines increase, the previous law mentioned giving or receiving corruption, but the new law is wider and specific because it includes embezzlement of state funds, illegal exemptions, failure to explain the source of one's assets, tax evasion, and more.
The Ombudsman Office also says that so far 6 people have failed to explain the origin of their assets, and that the office have already submitted 3 dossiers to the Investigation Bureau, while other 3 are still being prosecuted. In 2020, 37 out of more than 13,000 people did not participate in the declaration of their assets, prompting the Ombudsman Office to impose various penalties. In addition to corruption cases, MPs and senators have also commented on the issue of injustice, which appears in the Ombudsman's report. We reach in different districts and we find citizens saying that there is electricity lines, roads or water pipelines that passed through their areas, but they were not repatriated. MPs report it, but problems are not solved, yet the law is clear. What are you planning to do about this? Land issues are the most common. I want to ask, why are these issues not submitted to relevant authorities so that what is shown in this report can be solved? The ombudsperson explained that some of these issues had been referred to the relevant authorities to be resolved, while others are still being investigated. Much of these are land-related cases, which account to 30%, followed by repatriation, financial services, pending court cases and more. Sam Kalisa, Rwanda Television News.
Now, the National Public Prosecution Authority has filed an appeal against the judgment of the High Court of 20th of September 2021 in the case of Nsabimana Calist alias Sankara and co-accused. Now, following the verdict on September the 20th, the prosecution expressed its dissatisfaction with the ruling, during which Nsabimana was handed 20 years, while Rusesabagina got 25 years after they were found guilty on terror-related charges. Court also ruled in favor of the compensation of the victims who were affected by the attacks, including families that lost their beloved ones, those that were injured in the attacks between the years 2018 and 2019, as well as transport companies whose vehicles were torched by the FNL militia inside Nyungwe. All parties involved had 30 days to appeal, which elapsed yesterday, which was on the October 19th. Rwanda Space Agency RSA has filed a request to the satellite cancellation with the International ITU Telecommunication Union, and the submission is in compliance with ITU regulations and procedures, and the constellations were named Cinnamon 217 and Cinnamon 937. The Chief Executive Officer of the Rwanda Space Agency, Colonel Francis Ngabo, tells the essence of the application.
The application we lodge with ITU, it's a normal process that every country which want to launch satellites go through. It's as per ITU standard and regulations, which requires that before any country launches a satellite, they must register the satellite with the ITU and send all technical parameters that are needed for the satellite to operate without interfering with others or being interfered by others. So this is the process that we started. Yes, this is only the first step. What's going to follow is that there's going to be a process of coordination where countries that might have a concern that the constellation that we've registered might create interference with their existing satellites. They will come to us and we conduct a kind of coordination to avoid anything that might happen and cause harmful or damage to the existing networks. So this is the process that we're going to go in now after the ITU has received our application. It shows that Rwanda is ready to use space services for socio-economic development of the country. And number two, it's a signal that we're sending to the business sector, to the space sector, that Rwanda is ready for investment in the space sector, space communication, and space services in general.
Now, the public transport authorities have assured the public that they are streamlining transport facilities installed and those approved to operate in 15 routes or roads. As for the road users who do not have access to public transport, in the next 2 months, this will be solved. Jane Mutoni with more.
The Gihara-Ruyenzi road in Kamonyi has been paved and ready for use. Residents came up with transport means to get them from Gihara to Ruyenzi, whereas to get to the city, it requires them to take a bus twice. Most of them opt for motorcycles.
Ni ukuvuga ngo Runda yagize ikibazo cy'imodoka.
Public transport cars had stopped coming in Rwanda because of the earth road, so we decided to join forces and come up with the Transportation Association. Afterwards, we had to look for authorizing documents. Then rural administration told us to open up a company here, and we did so. It's called Family Express. The Director General of Rwanda Utilities Regulatory Authority, Dr. Ernest Sabimana, assures the public that by the end of next month, vehicles will be dispatched in Kigali routes or roads where public transport was not accessible, including the outskirts of Kigali as well.
The implementation process is almost done, which means in the beginning of November, public buses will already be dispatched in some of the roads, and in our plan, we did not leave out some roads to implement it later. This will be done in all of the roads at once.
In May last year, there were plans to make improvements in public transport, but were postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. These include ways of eliminating bus delays to arrive at bus stops, the introduction of special routes for only public buses. Vice Mayor in charge of urbanization and infrastructure in Kigali City, Dr. Mhabwana Maguru Berad, says there's some improvements still being made.
Public transport is there for people to be transported from one destination to another safely and on time. And that is why in the national blueprint, a bus rapid transit was included, whereby there are special roads for only public transport.
Rwanda Utilities Regulatory Authority has announced that special routes for public transport have been approved, including 5 in Gasabo, 5 in Nyarugenge, 4 in Kichukiro, and 1 in Nyabugogo Gihara, making them 15 roads in total. Jane Mutoni, RTV News.
Maison Shalom organization has laid the foundation stone for the construction of a 3-story building worth $300,000. Now the building will be used as a kindergarten.
In Kichukiro district, where the International Organization for the Refugees and the Disadvantaged, Maison Shalom, is based, its members, in collaboration with its Luxembourg donors, laid the foundation stone on Wednesday. Some of the students taught at the vocational center say the organization has helped them in terms of improving their livelihoods, as some of them were poor or school dropouts and others were refugees.
I was able to study free of charge, so I thank Maison Shalom for taking care of me. Because of their support and education, I'm able to make all kinds of juices.
Life is hard without education. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to finish college, so I thank the organization for giving me a chance. The director of Rwanda Maison Shalom, Richard Nijimbere, says the school will be a solution to children getting space for their kindergarten education, while also explaining the categories of children cared for by the organization.
Children haven't got a benefiting space for school classes, which is why we're going to construct it. We take care of all children in Rwanda, Burundi, especially refugees, and even children from Congo.
The Minister of Cooperation and Humanitarian Affairs of Luxembourg, Franz Fayot, and his envoy explained the blueprints for the building while laying the foundation stone for the site and vowed to continue supporting the project.
This is a project we have been supporting since the late 1990s, the project of Maggie and Maison Shalom, so we have decided also during the COVID to increase our support to help her to acquire land here in Rwanda to build this new expansion of this wonderful project, which is really there to help children who are victims from the war in Burundi, and to give them a training, to give also to young people a training. This is a priority of the Luxembourg development and humanitarian action, and we will continue supporting this project now.
Maison Shalom organization estimates that since its inception in 2015, 350 students have been trained in Rwanda, 400 in secondary schools, 430 in universities, and 400 in nursery. Jane Mutoni, RTV News.
Now, although the COVID-19 pandemic has shaken the world economy, there is hope that African youth can play a role in creating more jobs to meet this economic need. Now, this was among the issues discussed at the opening of the Youth Connect Africa Summit taking place in Accra, Ghana.
At the opening of this summit happening for the fourth time, the youth were asked not to perceive themselves as the problem of Africa, but rather a solution, and that the continent has a lot of hope in them. Young people have been shown the full potential of the continent, that this is the time for Africa and opportunity to create jobs through the exchange of information in whatever they do, which will make the African economy stronger through the production and development of continental products so that they can satisfy the continent and the surplus for the markets. Inaugurating the Youth Connect Summit, Ghana's Vice President, Dr. Mahamadou Baumia, says that many young Africans are poor, yet the continent is rich, and that if they are given every opportunity, they can contribute to the development of the continent.
The youth accounts for 60% of all of Africa's unemployed. For those that manage to find work, they do not do so in a place that pays a good wage or develops their skills or provides a measure of job security. No one needs to tell us that mass unemployment in Africa, especially amongst her youth, is a ticking time bomb. The so-called Arab Spring showed clearly that the lack of employment opportunities can undermine social cohesion and political stability.
In her address to the youth, on behalf of the President of the Republic of Rwanda, Minister of Youth and Culture, Rosemary Mbabazi, says that Africa is very rich in terms of having healthy young people who think out of the box in finding solutions, even though they were hindered by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Africa is wealthy in many aspects, but its most significant possession is its young generation. African youth are full of potential, energy, skills, talents, and are well positioned to take the lead of this continent's transformation. I'm speaking to the young people today. Your generation builds on incredible strides that the continent has made over the last couple of decades.
The president of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, reiterated that the youth today between the ages of 14 and 25 are 280 million on the continent and will be equal to 400 million by 2030, also adding that the time is now for the young people to start looking for a better future.
Donations and aid is welcome, but there is no country in the world, there is no continent in the world that has been built and that has succeeded based on aid, based on donations, based on philanthropy. We have the capacity as Africa, when we work together, and the African continental free trade area is a critical part of our potential to trade together, to do business together, because our growth, the growth and the future of our children, the growth and the future of our youth and our economies depends on trade amongst ourselves.
The Youth Connect Africa Summit aims to reach 226 million young Africans and help them access the market and find out about their opportunities in the African Common Market, which was signed in Rwanda, where it is expected to boost trade between Africa by 16% and multiply by 2035. Innocent Mugabo, RTV News.
Thank you, Innocent, for that story. Now, traders operating in various markets in Rubavu district say that the last 2 week, or the rather 2 week period they have been given to have at least the EBM billing phones is not enough compared to what is required to start using the method. And according to Sam Kalisa, they point out that the phones required are expensive, yet the businesses have been hit hard by the effects of COVID-19.
In Gisenyi Market, the Rwanda Revenue Authority staff continues the campaign to encourage traders to use EBM receipts in not more than 2 weeks. Some traders say that they are still hindered by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, plus the earthquakes that followed the Nyiragongo volcanic eruption, hence requesting for additional time before they start using EBM. They are requesting us to use EBM machines, but it requires high standard phones, which are Android 8 version phones, which costs to over 100,000 Rwandan francs. Whoever buys the EBM phone will not be allowed to sell it. Hence, these traders request the Revenue Authority to give them the phones so that they can be able to pay in installments. The other problem is that when you buy the phone, you're not allowed to sell it. So the question we keep asking ourselves is if these phones belong to us or to the government. The Deputy Commissioner for Taxpayers Services at the Rwanda Revenue Authority, Witonze Jean Paul, says that traders have been given enough time to prepare for the use of the electronic billing machines, hence they should start using them in accordance to the deadline given to them. They should have done it before, but it seems like they dragged their feet in implementing it. We have started the campaign to encourage all traders to start using EBMs. Android 8 version is not an expensive phone because it costs around 60,000 Rwandan francs. Those who do not have them will be helped. The Rwanda Revenue Authority has announced that in 2019, the agency started the enactment of the Tax Regulation Act, which stipulates that all traders who have been given TIN numbers must submit EBM receipts to help in collecting the value-added tax.